internet, and welcome to my August wrap-up. What I read in August. I read 11 books. So let's get into it. The first book I read was Furyborn. Started reading it at the end of July and I finished it August 2nd or August 3rd. Fun concept. It's two point of views of people 1,000 years apart from each other. It was a good, nice fantasy world. I wasn't really attached to any of the characters, though there was some good foundation there. Although I can't really remember much of the plot now that I'm thinking about it at all. I really don't know what happened. There was magic, and that's all I can remember, but I will be reading the next one because it was intriguing enough that I want to know how it goes. So that was the first one. So this, 4 stars. Oh boy, where do I even start with this one? I read this because I really loved Vicious and Renegades and like the superpower type stuff, and I wanted to read more like it, but boy, did I not have a good time. I had so much of a bad time, in fact, that I forgot to say the name of this book, which is Steelheart. I started reading this one in July, and it took me over a month to finish. The premise is interesting enough, but I did not care about like any of the characters at all. There was way too much time describing like weapons for my liking, and the fight scenes were just not entertaining at all. Like there was like chase scenes and fight scenes, there was stuff happening. It wasn't entertaining to me. Could not focus on the action. I could not focus on anything. The main female lead really just kind of felt like they were there to be the love interest. They didn't really have much of a personality. I mean, they kind of did, but like it just felt off. Something that the main character David could be conflicted about. Whoa, I'm so attracted to her, why? And it just like, it felt so weird. So not my vibe. The characters were also just like really cliche, I feel like, but not in a good way, because there is some cliches that if done right, it's still fun. That wasn't the case with this. And the writing. The best way I can describe how it like felt to read, the embodiment of a straight white dude. Which, in this case, is not good. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. The next book I read was So This Is Ever After. This is essentially a fantasy rom-com, but like set in a castle, you know, fantasy world. The characters to me kind of felt like an assortment of like, you know, D&D characters or something like that. I don't know it. I don't play D&D, but I know like the base. It felt like that, or like a cartoon show, or like all the characters were just, is he a sorceress or a mage or something? And the chosen one, it takes place after the main guy like completes his quest. So it's a funny little spin. It was a good cast of characters that I liked. It was cute, and it was a good break from my serious fantasies that I read. It's funny to me too, because the title of this one is So This Is Ever After. And in The Charm Offensive, which is a romance book that I really like, the only one that I've actually kind of liked, the reality TV show is Ever After, like the fantasy reality TV show to find their ever after. So now in my brain, I just associate the two together. It's kind of ironic because this is like the fantasy version of what the show is trying to be. Not really, but this is for the LGBTs. 4 stars. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Which is the third in the From Blood and Ash series. Yes, I am rating these series, but listen, it is getting better. Slightly. I have a lot of problems with this series that I'm not going to get into because that's a whole other thing. The first 2 books are kind of boring, but I don't know what drove me to because I was curious. It's such a popular like book talk book, and I can see why. I can see the one reason why. It's not totally for me. Basically, I would not recommend it, but I'm in too deep now. I am on the 3rd one, which by the way, I thought was the last. I thought it was gonna be done with them, but it's not. So of course now I gotta read the next one. This one I did enjoy for the most part. It took me a while to read aspects of the story that's just they're so wild and like insane that like I'm just intrigued. It's like an intrigue read. It is a very spicy book, just so you know that. This series is very spicy. That is why it is popular on Book Talk, I would assume, which is not my usual personal preference. I'll leave you with this quote. I can't even say it. Lift your ass, my queen. Please lift your ass, my queen. I can't. Some of the dialogue is just fucking insane. I'm just laughing while I'm reading the dialogue a lot of the time because like, what? It's entertaining and it makes me laugh because either of how absurd it is or the conversations they have in general. Also, they are so long and they do not need to be this long. Every single book is way too long for no reason. Okay, let's move on. I gave it a 3.5, so give it a 3.5 stars. Next book is The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I read this one because it's like a staple, I feel like, in the young adult fantasy world. I'd never read it before, and I've just been wanting to read it for a while because I was kind of curious. Honestly, I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing about it besides the premise. Of course, like, you have different blood, so that's what color class is formed, is through what kind of color blood you have. I don't know. I went into this like almost completely blind. I honestly do not know how I did not predict the plot twist, because it is the most obvious plot twist like ever, but for some reason when I read it I just did not see it coming, and I was actually kind of shocked, so props to that, I guess. I think some of it has to do with the fact that I had just driven like 8 hours straight, and I read this in a hotel room, which, by the way, I read it all in one day, basically in one sitting in this hotel room. I read the entirety of this book. I didn't care about any of the characters again. Kind of have no personality, especially Mare or whatever. I don't remember what it was. Mare. I can't remember one thing about her, genuinely. And the love interest stuff didn't really have any like basis to it. I was so befuddled and confused when things happened. I kind of knew what like was going to happen just based on the tropes and stuff. Like, I kind of knew where it was going, but the stuff that did happen just like kind of jumped out of nowhere, and I was like, what? So baffled. So like they had no connection at all. The whole like magic system really confused me a little bit too, because it felt like almost like superpower, like superheroes, and the way they had this training room. The whole world itself was really hard to like understand, because I was going into it like thinking, you know, fantasy, full fantasy vibes, and it's more dystopian-ish fantasy. I really had trouble picturing things. It was a weird experience. Also, she says the phrase "beyond my comprehension" at least 2 times in the first like 2 chapters. Can you not use other words to explain? So it wasn't fun to read necessarily, but it was really easy considering I read it so quickly. I did enjoy actually a lot some of it, more than I was expecting to enjoy it. Went into this not thinking I would really like it that much. Overall, I gave it a 3 stars. The next book I read was How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. I love this book. I think I love Matt Haig's writing a lot, how he like describes life and scenario. I don't really have any attachment to the characters in the books that he writes, really. I love stories about life, people who live forever. It's one of my favorite. Like, Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is one of those. I just love thinking about living forever. It's such an interesting topic for my brain, so I love reading this book. The way he writes this book is just like really comforting to me. It's weird because I'm a very character driven person in books, and like if you don't give me good characters, like I just won't have as good as a time, I feel like. But the weird thing about this one is I don't really care about the characters that much. The way it's written is really comforting to me, and the way he like makes connections between life done in a fantasy element. So it's not like you're reading a normal book that teaches you about life through normal life. It's teaching you about life through fantasy, and like it's more interesting. You know what I mean? I did like this one. I don't think it wasn't as good as The Midnight Library in my opinion, which is another one by him, which is one I loved. I gave it a 4.5 stars. Still one of my favorite. I love this book. Next book I read was a graphic novel, Lore Olympus. This one is like huge everywhere, and I've been wanting to read more graphic novel stuff, but the plot itself was like a little meh, but pretty art, and I always love looking at pretty art, so 4 stars. The next book I read was The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, and this one is a continuation after the Truly Devious trilogy, and I just love this series so much. The characters are all really unique, and there's a good cast of characters, I think. And this one is Stevie, the main character, our detective teenager person, gets invited to a summer camp where there was the previous cold case murder of 4 teenagers in 1978. And it's the same camp. She gets invited by the camp owner, who is doing a podcast on it to try to solve the mystery. Also, this book had so much Nate content, and I love Nate so much. He's been my favorite character throughout the whole series. He's just like very relatable, okay? Grumpy writer who does not like to talk to people. I mean, come on. I gave this a 5 stars. That may be part of the reason why, is because there was so much Nate content. But also, I just love this world. It's a nice refresh. It's one of these books that like I read and I'm completely enveloped in the story the whole time. Sometimes it's hard to get into it, but this one was one that I was like, read it so fast and it feels so smooth because like I'm just so invested. But can I just have like a full book of Nate, like from his point of view? That's all I want. I need that someday. Maureen Johnson, please give me that. Just more Nate content. That's all I want, man. Please and thank you. It was a good fun mystery that got wrapped up towards the end. I totally get lost in this world whenever I read it, so 5 stars. Next book is Malice by Heather Walter, and this is basically a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but make it gay, and you're the villain. took me a little bit for my brain to kind of focus on what was going on. Once I did and things started like happening, it was very good. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the spin it took on the classic Sleeping Beauty story. Side note, these two books are the best like spines in books I think I've ever had. They're the perfect flop ratios. Like when you read them, they stay open. Like, look how nice this is. A lot of books don't do that. So you can just like literally hold it like this and read it. This one's the same way. And I was like, I kept getting distracted while I was reading it and just like doing this and like looking at it. And like, it's so nice. But people know, these are nice books. If that's something you care about, these are awesome. It's like if I were to look at like this one even, and I try to do that, it doesn't do that. And the flop is not as good. That's something that you look forward to. These two books are like that. The other Truly Devious ones must be the same way, but I don't have them with me right now because I let my family borrow them. Because that's how good the series is. I was like, yes, read them please. That was 4 stars. Next book is November 9th by Colleen Hoover. If you want to see my full reactions of this, I did a reading vlog about it here. Click on it somewhere. I don't know how YouTube works. It's somewhere. 3.5 stars. It was insane, but it was still enjoyable. And my last book I read in August was Forging Silver into Stars by Bridget Kemmerer. Kemmerer. I'm so sorry. They are the author of like one of my favorite books, which is Defy the Night, that I've talked about before. It is a continuation of the Cursebreaker trilogy, kind of like The Box in the Woods was. But it was so good. It was so good. It's set in the Cursebreaker trilogy world, like 4 to 5 years after the events take place. We got 2 new characters, 3 new point of views to read, with a returning character, Tycho, and his point of view. I was so invested in these characters, like so invested. Like I mentioned, I'm a character-driven person. The plot itself was good too. I was on the edge of my seat. I was antsy reading this because like it was so well done. In my opinion, Jax and Callan are a blacksmith and a baker that accidentally get caught up in treason, essentially. I did not want to put this book down. Even though it's longer, like it's 500 something pages, it did not feel like that. Like the pacing was so good and there was a good balance between all of the point of views. And I actually decided to like partially annotate this book because the reactions I was getting from things that were happening, it was insane. Look how much I annotated this book, dude. Quite a bit, using my method with like the sticky notes and writing on it. So good. This is exactly why I read. I don't know what it is about Bridget Kemmerer and her writing and her characters for some reason that I adore them all so much. I did like the trilogy, but this is shaping up to be better than the Cursebreaker trilogy in my mind, honestly. But this other character, I loved him. I loved his story a lot. They show me like how he's acting towards people in this, and it's like I get it because there's some stuff that happened, but I'm like, I don't know if I like him as much anymore. So that was kind of sad. Would definitely recommend. My only worry is that really hope this series does not go downhill like the Cursebreaker trilogy, because that trilogy, it goes downhill. It's my only worry about this. I absolutely love this book so much. It's definitely my favorite of the month, 5 stars. So that concludes all the books I read in August, which is, oh god, okay, 12 books. I'll do this next month with my September wrap up. That was my August wrap up. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. It's going very well. Oh, this is just going to fall. Thank you for watching.